Okay, so this is the image that I'm going to be drawing. This is obviously a side view of the utility knife. So this is what I will be importing into Fusion 360. So I have opened up Fusion 360 here. And so, I'm not really sure what we're looking at. Generally, it's like a home view. Let me turn these on. I may have turned them off. You see this weird shape here. And all right, so what I want to do is I want to bring in that side view. And so you'll notice that there's this home, but if you look on the right, there's top, front, right. I'm going to be bringing this into my right view. I could also bring it to the left view. So what I'm going to do is, if you notice on the top, it says insert. And if you just hover over these, you'll see something that says decal, canvas, all these other things. And if you see there, there's actually a car. So the way that designers typically work is they do a lot of drawings, they flush it out, and then they bring it into the computer and they'll create what's called an orthographic view. So they'll do a front view, side view, top view, and try to figure that out, proportions, scale, and what have you, and then they bring it into the computer. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and push canvas, and then it's going to want to know where you bring it for insert my computer. I've already told it where to go, and so it's the utility knife that I downloaded. And so it's asking, if you look very closely on the right, it says face. So it needs to know, where are you going to put this? And I'm going to put this, remember, this is my right view. So I just select this face, and that's where it is. You'll notice things like opacity, and that can be really helpful if you're trying to draw things around through. I just generally do the default or put it at 50%. There's scale. Unfortunately, I don't know how to scale it at this point. So what I'll do is just say okay. And so I can zoom in here, but the reality is I have no idea what the size of this thing is. So before I get too ahead of myself, if you notice here, it's actually kind of nice because some of the softwares you have to change it and leave, but I can go ahead and change it on the fly to imperial, which is inches, or metric. And I'm just going to go say inches. I'll leave it there, and that's fine. So make sure that you are in the scale that you want. And then you'll see in here, what's happened is there's something canvas here. So there it is. I can turn it off and on. And so what I need to do though is I need to scale this. So I'm going to do what's called calibrate. It's actually a really nice tool here. So I right click on my utility knife within the canvas, and I simply right click and I hit calibrate, right? And so what I do then is I click on one and the other side, and I already decided that this is going to be about 6 inches. So I would type in 6, right? And so there it is at 6 inches. Now, I didn't do a very good job. I noticed it was kind of weird, so I could recalibrate it. Click on one side, then go to the other, try to keep it, horizontal, and maybe just and it really doesn't make that much of a difference, to be honest with you. So I'll go ahead and click here, and I'll say, actually, that should be 6 inches, all right? And if you want to do it smaller or bigger, that's fine, all right? So if you notice, there it is. And then what I would do is I would go and I right click and I'd say edit canvas, because I'm going to move this. And so if you look here, you've got all these things. There's like arrows, and I can scale, and I don't want to scale, but I can just move it. And that is typically in CAD, you have something called the 0, 0. And so it's that Cartesian coordinate where on the left, going left and right, is the X, going X and Y, and then Z is coming at you. So in this, typically what you would do is the top would be the X and the Y, and the Z is coming at you. But you'll see it all over here too. So, but we put it in the right view, and so I'm okay with that. I'll say okay, all right? So now what I need to do is build this thing. And what am I going to build this with? So the cool thing is, if you've used CAD, typically, a person who's doing CAD would just, like 2D, they would just kind of click lines, and then they would do something called extrude, and then they would, what's called a fillet, they try to soften the edges. But AutoCAD has this thing called create form. And this is extremely powerful. And this is what lacks in some of the other, like SolidWorks or AutoCAD, where what you're essentially going to do is you could do a, like we, for example, in my other class, we're working on helmets. So we would bring in a what's called a ball and simply delete what we don't want, but we have that round shape. So in this scenario, I'm going to create a box, and you'll see here, um, it's going to be a rectangular box. I can click it from 2 points or from the center out. It doesn't really matter. I'll click 2 points. And then I'm going to do this symmetrically. And I'm going to create what's called a new body. And so symmetrically, what that means is what I do on one half will go to the other. So let's go ahead and do this, and let's just see what happens here. All right. So, all right. So either center or 2 point, and then I'll come in here and I'll just click 2 points. I'll click a point here and then a point over here. And you'll notice a shape appeared. And there's these weird lines, and we can, if we've worked in Illustrator, we call these lines splines, but you can add a lot more splines because the more splines you have, the more control you have. So if you notice, you just play with the numbers. I could say 6 here, and there's a lot more splines. That's the length, the height. I could put in 4. You don't want to go crazy with this kind of stuff, but you can add things like that. Um, and then the other thing I want to do is I want to figure out this whole notion of symmetry. And so what that enables me to do when things are working symmetrical is I can work on one half the side and it automatically does it on the other half. And let me show you what that means. So I would say symmetry, there's length symmetry. Now, what I would work on the right side would go on the left. I don't want that because that doesn't help me. I want to have not width. I actually want to have what's called height, meaning what I work on this side goes on the other side. And I'll say, okay. So let's just see what happens here. So what I can do then is I haven't finished this form. I've got, essentially this shape, and it's, if you remember, my utility knife was transparent, so I can kind of see through it. So generally what you do is, let's go to the top view here. If you notice the object that this weird rectangle thing is on the same plane as the photograph, which actually works pretty well for me. So then what I'm going to do is really just kind of simply, I can grab my mouse, grab points, and I can just, what I do is I grab these points and I can edit the form, right? So I can take things and I can start dragging and editing parts of this. And so just like I did where I scaled, I can start manipulating my object and doing kind of all sorts of interesting things here. So let's grab these little points here. Rather than have to build it from scratch, I'm just going to real quickly um, try to replicate the shape that I'm doing. And, a lot of it is just trying to figure out what is the most efficient way to do it. So I'm doing this very quickly. Things you can also do, you can grab this one side. You'll notice there's a little rotation angle. So it's kind of like cheating. Like, is this really fair that, here, if you're trying to do this in AutoCAD or something like that, you would be spending, months trying to get this shape. And I'm just grabbing and moving objects really quickly and having a grand old time at it. All right. So let's see what I've created so far. So I'd say, let's look at the 3D view, but you'll notice that it's actually all happening on this right and left at the same time. And it's really not that much more complicated than what I've done here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pause this for a moment. Pause, resume recording. Okay, so I was just kind of bouncing around. So let's just say there's a timeline down here that you should be aware of, right? So I was adding little shapes here, but here's my shape back there. So I could always, it kind of shows you how you build an object. Like, how is this object built? And so you've got this timeline here, and you can go back and find your object and work on it. So I've got my object here. I'm still working on it. So let's just say, for example, I was going to pause here and just kind of kind of iterate what I did here. So I went to design. Let's get out of design. Let's go back. And I went to the sheet metal, this kind of create form, and I picked a box. And so, I'm doing a new body, and that'll be, you'll understand what that's, but I'm kind of doing something symmetrical 2 point. So I'd probably, if I'm making another object next to it, I would just select a point here and select a point like this. And then remember, let's look at it in 3D. Um, I can add splines to this, and I think some of the Mac users were having problems here. And so if you don't see the splines, what you can do is go into the visual display, and if it's shaded, notice there's no splines. So what you want to do is click on that and go to visual style, and you want you can just do wireframe. That's a little hard to see. There's a lot of other things you can do shaded with edges. You'll also notice like you can add environment. There's all sorts of things you can do. I wouldn't do that yet, but you can always play around with that and see what that's all about. Um, just a different kind of color scheme. So let's just go back to environment. I'm just going to go back to this one. But so here you notice I can add again, so I am working because I am working on the side, and I want whatever I do on this side to go the other. But again, you could just, if I wanted to go on the top and whatever I'm working, if I even want symmetry, you don't have to do symmetry, but more than likely on something like this, I'm going to do my, and look at the arrows, right? You can do multiple, but what I wanted to do was this height symmetry. So what I do on this side, and so again, you want to preset this. You can go back and change it, but you can be very specific on the size here if you need to. So just by typing this in, you can have a lot of control. The width, I would say, minus 3.5, whatever that is. This is where you have a lot of control. Um, and then what you would do is if I want to manipulate the object, so let's just say I want to take this front corner, I right click on it and I say edit form, right? And so then I can take these shapes and I can pull it, and I can pull it out. Notice if I pull it on one side, it's going to go on the other. So let's do that again. So let's just say I grab this point and I pull it out. You'll notice it pulls out on the other side. If I want to grab the point here, it's going to make it symmetrical. And the other thing you can do is also you can rotate them, right? The challenge with rotating is you don't want to fold it within itself, because that can lead to some sort of problems. So I might grab this whole front here and rotate it and such. But so notice when it pinches in there, like back here, that's a big no-no, because it'll actually give you an error message and you just won't be able to fix it. All right, so let's just say okay. Um, let's just kind of keep moving here. So here is my original one way back here, and like what happened to it? Where did it go? So there's a timeline here. I would go back and I select my timeline. So I do have to finish though. You'll notice that nothing's going to happen until I finish that form. All right, so then my timeline's back here, and I can go back. So it actually lets you go back in time, so to speak, right? So you can go back and there's just the image. And so down, it's actually a very powerful tool. So I want to work on this, but where did everything go? Like I don't have all those commands. What you need to do is right click on it and say edit again. And if you don't see all these splines, you can go down here again and you can add them in the visual style. I'm going to do shaded with visible edges. All right. So, and then I'm going to just kind of try to clean this up a little bit. So, things you can do here is I need another spline here. I don't know what to do. So you can come up to insert, help me out here. Let's see, give me a second. Modify. I can insert points, I can insert edges, so I can say insert edge, and I can either put it on this side or I can put it on this side. I can also double click, let's just cancel that. I can also double click this line and it'll go all the way around by double clicking it, and I'll go up to modify, insert edge, and I can do it that way too. All right, so you can do it object snap. There's a lot you can do with this. So um, you can go back in. So this case, I wanted to grab, I felt like I needed a couple more points here. So then I could grab this, right click, I'm editing the form and I can just manipulate it as I want. You can add more edges if you need. I could take I feel like I just need another edge here. So maybe I just grab this and I come up here and I say symmetry or modify, insert edge, and I want it on this side. So I click on this arrow over here, put it right where I want. Okay. And then I could grab this point and I would right click on it and say edit form, and I could rotate it. You could do all sorts of things. It just takes a little bit of practice to get comfortable with all this. But the nice thing is it's going to be pretty, you can pretty much, if you have a drawing like we did, you can really spend some time, and I'm going to go rather quickly, so not to spend a lot of time on this, but you can get very granular in terms of like how precise do you want to be with this. Sometimes when you do it, it moves the other one, so that's maybe when you would be adding splines. Like if like every time I move it, this is too round, and I want this point here, so I might just go ahead and say again, let's go ahead and there's probably a faster insert edge. Let's add another one. Okay. Uh, it's going to change a little bit. Insert another edge. And so you can really have a lot of control over this. All right. So, okay. So now what I'll do is I'll just grab this right here, right click and say edit form, and I can move it to where I want. I can take this line right here. It's always good, and I'm going a little too fast to inspect it in 3D as you go along. Um, and so I might just rotate this a little bit because it's there. It's a little bit more. I can move it. And then I had that point right here that I wanted. So I might take this whole thing and drag it up a little bit. You just have to be careful because it affects the other coordinates. So if I just want this point here, I might just click this line. Again, you should really be careful though and inspect it in the 3D view, because sometimes you accidentally do things and you've destroyed and you don't even know it. Other thing you should always do is save early, save often. So I've not saved this yet. So I'm going to save. I'll type this as my utility knife. All right. So a couple things I want to do. I think I'll be able to, I think what we'll do is we'll go back and add some things. I want to add the knife. So what I'd like you to do is to just get to this point where you have the object like this and save it. Try to do your best to just go over the form the best you can in this edit form, and start just try to get as much as you can of this working. So try to get it as close as you can to this utility knife or your own utility knife that you were working on the other day, and save it. And then what we'll do is next week we'll finish the knife. We'll build some of this other things, and then we will take it and add textures and materials to it, and we'll add your logo to it also. All right. So I think this is probably a good place to stop. So the other last thing I'll say is if you look on the top, you're going to see the show data panel. And this is where your work gets saved. So you'll be able to save your work. And I've got lots of things here. You can create new folders. So I already, believe it or not, I already have a utility knife in there. So it can get a little chaotic here, but this is where you save all your projects. And the other thing you can do is you can share. So if Mark or Geronimo, whoever wanted to share their work with me, you can actually share your files and collaborate. And you do that in people here. So there's a lot of things you can do to share work between you two. So I'm going to save this again, and then I will continue working on this. Now, the cool thing is I don't need a flash drive. If I close this and I've saved it, it'll automatically be over here wherever I save this. So here's my utility knife. It tells me the date. I've got lots of other cool things going on here, so I've saved it. So for example, this is a project we're working on the other class. Here's my helmet that we made, and we kind of knocked this out using the exact same technique where we created a form. In this case, we used this quad ball. We took we had a object which was a we uploaded this body of this human head, and so it's kind of the same sort of process that we do. So let me show you how you would do that without getting into too much of detail. The way that we did that is we had this quad ball, same thing, we're a new body, and then we just picked this object, but we decided, maybe add some more splines. So there's a lot more features here, but symmetry exactly the same, new body. Maybe I have this a little bit more detail. All right, so you see what we did, say okay. And then to get a helmet, all I did was then is I just took half of it and deleted it, right? And then I just did the same process around this head like a drawing where I would just take part of it and right click and edit form, and I would just drag it down here, and the ear went up here. So you can see how very quickly, and then we do it a front view where we try to, do some things like that. So really the same process of the utility knife of doing a helmet. And then the other thing we did is we added graphics, right? So, there's a lot of really fun things you can do that would normally be very, very difficult. All right, so I'm not going to finish this, so that's good. All right, so again, our utility knife that we're working on here, we'll spend a little bit more time on it, but that's the first phase of this lesson. All right, so let me stop it.